Hello again, everybody. This chapter, I will introduce what the governments have been doing from the perspective of digital transformation. I'll focus on digital transformation during the COVID-19 pandemic and the key initiatives and policies of the UK and EU and New Zealand are briefed in this module. The course objectives is as follows. I want you to understand the issues and challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. When I just was talking about the COVID-19 pandemic, I will just use COVID or virus or crisis interchangeably. And I also want you to understand how governments and organizations respond to the COVID challenges. And what's very important in this session is to understand the digital policies of the EU and UK, New Zealand in overcoming the COVID-19 crisis and beyond, and also the understanding of the role of digital policies and digital transformation in dealing with the COVID-19 is very important. The structure of this course is as follows. Pandemic goes with digital policies, and I will briefly introduce the integrated and coordinated common approach of the EU, and then I will introduce the UK's cases, which is summarized as single window approach. The third one is New Zealand case, which has characteristics of prioritization framework based approach. And then I will provide some summary. Let's move on to a pandemic going with digital policy. The COVID-19 will accelerate digital transformation. Everybody knows. Without this COVID crisis, in many countries, many organizations, they won't go virtual very aggressively. But because of this COVID, many countries, many governments, many organizations, many schools, they are forced, in some sense, they are forced to go online or go virtual. So when the COVID-19 pandemic broke out earlier last year, much of the world moved online, accelerating a digital transformation that has been on the way for decades. For many periods, a lot of governments, a lot of organizations try to go virtual, try to go online, but many people are hesitant to go online. But because of this pandemic, they are forced to, meaning that they have no alternative, they have no options but to go online. In the school, in the education, children with at-home internet accesses began attending class remotely. Many employees started working from home, teleworking, it's called teleworking. And many firms adopted digital business models to maintain operations and preserve some revenue flows. And during the COVID period, many countries, many governments, many organizations use mobile applications to track and trace. And sometimes AI, artificial intelligence, was used to learn more about the virus and to accelerate the search for vaccine. So I couldn't summarize what's going on in the world from the perspective of digital transformation, accelerating and widening and deepening of digital transformation. One thing for sure, as I mentioned, COVID-19 accelerated digital transformation. And also, digital transformation is applied to many sectors of our society. I call it widening of digital transformation. Also, digital technology, ICT, has been embedded to many activities and many operations, many processes, many organizations, even daily life, very deeply, which is called deepening of digital transformation. So I don't have to go over again. Everybody is feeling the impact of digital transformation in every aspect of our society and every aspect of our economic activities in our daily lives. So I don't have to go in detail over here. Regardless of how the crisis and its aftermath unfold, there's no doubt digital technologies will continue to transform the way we live and work. It will not stop. It won't to stop after COVID-19 is over. Regardless of the COVID-19, digital transformation will continue, I'm sure. And also the new technologies like 5G and IoT and AI, blockchain, all the new technologies will be used in every activities of our society. We could find at this moment, most of the countries are very aggressive to adopt and take advantage of the potential of ICT and digital technologies over the course of coping with, or dealing with, preventing or treating the COVID-19 pandemic. And we'll take a look at 3 cases among many countries, EU and UK and New Zealand in this module, using technology, digital technologies during and possibly after pandemic. We must take a look at the possible application of ICT even after the pandemic, because we are highly likely to have another pandemic in the foreseeable future. So nobody knows for sure what's coming up next. Let's take a look at EU cases. I summarize this EU's approach as integrated and coordinated approach. Some may call it integrated and coordinated common approach, because EU has a lot of member states, so they must have a common framework, common principles, common integrated and coordinated approach. That's why it's worthwhile to take a look at the cases of the EU. EU has recommendations to support exit strategy through mobile data applications. In many countries, the government and organizations use mobile phone or mobile technologies to share data and to share information. And sometimes they provide lots of guidance and policies to the people through mobile tools. And digital tools can play a very important and pivotal role in the lifting of containment measure when the time will be ripe for that, meaning that when we need a application of mobile and applications, we must take advantage of the potential of ICT. That's what this means. Digital tools can play an important role. And the EU Commission recommends steps and measures to develop common EU approach. I stress here, quote unquote, common EU approach for the use of mobile applications and mobile data in response to coronavirus case. So you must remember that when you try to use these mobile apps and data, you must have a common coordinated approach so that all the parties concerned can cooperate each other. So we must stress here, we must remember here, we need to develop common approach within one countries or within one organizations. what they did is EU tried to recommend some common integrated guidelines for mobile data and apps and other policy frameworks. So the recommendations set out key principles for the use of these apps and data. They need key principles so that each member state can apply in their own country and in EU territory and EU boundary. Without any common approach, without any common standard, the member states cannot cooperate with each other. So that's why they need a common key principles. And also, they must set a very common framework for data security and the fundamental rights such as privacy and data protection. These factors are very important because even though they have a technical infrastructures to share data and cooperate in terms of information sharing and working together, without any legal framework regarding privacy and personal data and data protection, data security, they cannot share the data and they cannot cooperate with each other. So we must pay attention to these legal and institutional arrangements in addition to technological steps. In EU, since the outbreak of the pandemic, the EU Commission services have been looking into the effectiveness of app solution to address the crisis. And in your country, I guess, you must take some lessons from this country. EU provides common toolbox towards a common coordinated approach. So in your country, you must have a common coordinated and integrated approach for all different parties concerned. That's the key takeaways of this approach. So all these recommendations consist of specification to ensure the effectiveness of mobile information and data in terms of interoperability and promotion of common solutions. And also, we need a systematic governance systems so that all the parties concerned can take part in the process of this dealing with COVID-19 and data sharing. Also, they must identify the good practices or best practices. And also, they can identify good mechanism of exchange of information on the functioning of applications. So when you try to apply some principles and guidelines to your own country, you must identify key elements of technological, legal, and institutional key areas so that all the parties concerned can share data and information without any barriers. That's the key takeaways from this approach. And another case of this response is UK. I will summarize this UK's case in single window approach. By single window approach, I mean you don't have to set up another channel for COVID-19. You can add new channel to the existing resources like NHS, National Health Service in the UK. So you don't have to set up another whole new different channels, but just to simply add one information window to the NHS window. In UK, they add the coronavirus response channel to the existing NHS. So NHS, National Health Service, provides information on and guide on health and health in a single window in NHS homepage. So you can just visit this homepage over here. You don't have to follow my words in detail because I think they will continue to update this information. So you don't have to follow what I explained here. For example, in their homepage, they provide health alpha to omega, A to Z here. They provide guided conditions and symptoms and treatments, including what to do and what to get help. And also, they provide some medicines information, which allows people to find out how your medicine works, how and when to take it, possible side effects, and answers to your common questions. So simply put, when you have questions on general health issues and also issues on COVID-19, you don't have to go to other sites. You can just simply go to NHS site. Then you can find the resources and information guidelines on COVID-19. That's why I call it single window approaching. You can take some lessons from this approach because in many governments, they try to set up new channel for COVID-19. It will confuse the people very seriously. So you don't have to set up whole new different channel. Instead, you can add one more channel to the existing health-related homepage. That's what's nice about this approach. And for example, they provide some COVID-19, and they can also get all the new information about COVID-19. So a whole lot of different information is changing constantly because nobody is sure about what's going on and what will be happening in the future. So every people and every scientist, every government officers, they will try to update their information and they try to get scientific about COVID-19. So as soon as they find new findings from the COVID-19, they constantly update the information on this site. So you are supposed to go to this site and find out what's going on here. That's a pretty nice approach here. So as you can see over here, they provide coronavirus information, and also they provide information about vaccination. As you can see here, you can book your COVID vaccination over here. I don't know how your vaccination is going on in your country. In some countries, vaccination is going on very smoothly, and in other countries, vaccination is a little bit slow, and they will face some difficulty because geographically in some countries it's spread very widely, and sometimes we can experience the shortage of a vaccination at this stage. So with vaccination going on in many countries, depending on the situation of each geographical and economic and behavioral hesitance, it's different from country to country. So you can provide some information on coronavirus per se, and also you can provide information on vaccination. That's one of the nice lessons we can take from the NHS here. And they provide lots of test and trace applications over here. You can download these applications over here, and also you can find out what kind of restrictions are enforced as of now. So you can get all the information about this COVID-19. That's why single window approach is very effective and nice. And you can also get some financial support from the government. And also travelers around the world can get information on coronavirus in England, in UK. And also another project I'd like to introduce to you is COVID Oximetry at home. This is a digital and data services. This system is a kind of existing system that monitor the patients all the time. So they can collect and analyze the data at this point of time, and also they will just accumulate this data for the possible future. So in the future, if they have some other problem, they can use this data, accumulated data, so that they can make an effective response to the possible future pandemic. It's a very nice and a good approach, which you can take some lessons from. As you can see over here, they just provide lots of services and data. So when they try to deal with existing pandemic, they are not only providing and collecting data from COVID patients, but also they can accumulate, they are building data, they just build data for the future use of this data. That's very nice about it. And also, it is it will be very used very effectively in the future. Then collection includes information on patients who have started or stopped using COVID Oximetry. So you can just observe, you can monitor what's going on at this point of time. And also you can make use of this data collected during this COVID-19. It's a very nice approach. So the information will be used to manage and evaluate the services. And also this information will be used in the future. For example, this information, this data includes age and vulnerability, all relevant data on this one. And this data accumulated from this oximetry at home will be used in the future. That's why we call it beyond and above COVID-19. For example, other than COVID-19, flu immunization will be just coming up in many societies. So this data can be used for flu vaccination, flu immunization. Simply put, key takes away from the UK case are to make use of the existing system. I call it single window approach. You don't have to set up new system. You can use the existing system through a single window approach, and you can collect the data to deal with the existing COVID-19, and also you can use that data for the possible future diseases. That's why I call it look beyond the pandemic. That's the key takeaway of this approach. Now let's move to New Zealand. The punchline of this New Zealand approach is, I call it prioritization framework-based approach. The key point of this approach is that when we have some crisis situation, we can be very confused. Nobody knows what patients, what sectors, what functions have priorities. So the resources, valuable resources, cannot be effectively used without any prioritization framework. So the New Zealand government provides a prioritization framework so that they can allocate resources very effectively. So the digital government of New Zealand provided advice and support for government organizations during the COVID pandemic. And they provide advice, guidance, and requesting support for critical digital services. What it means is that when you have some tasks lining up over here, you must understand which one has prioritized, which one is urgent. So you must make decision on in which area you must allocate data. So the government ICT prioritization framework was provided in New Zealand during COVID-19. And also the New Zealand government provides a guidance and advice on remote working because COVID-19 forced us to work remotely, study remotely. That is the very effective approach of this framework. For example, this framework has three key parts. The first one is advice, guidance, and requesting for support for critical digital services. So critical digital services, right? A lot of people, a lot of organizations will request lots of different needs, urgent needs. But with a limited resources, you must make a decision, effective decision. So this working group just provide a digital and data services according to the prioritization framework. That's the one area. This request is met according to the framework, then this government digital CO working group is supporting the organization constantly. And the government also provide advice for government agencies constantly. So the key point of these details, one is you must prioritize the request from all corners of a society. The details too. Government provided detailed category of request depending on the urgency, depending on the criticality, depending on the severity of the problem. So request for ICT resources will be actioned according to the following 6 triage. Triage meaning that classification of patient severity over here. They have a 6 triage priority group. So when you face request with limited resources, you can refer to this category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For example, so simple individual request, it will come very late, right? This is severity, critical government organization, it should come very first. So if you are an ICT provider, you can use this process to walk through request for support here. And also, because of the COVID-19, lots of organizations, lots of people are forced to work remotely. So the government provide advice and guidance on remote working over here. That's a good approach you can take lesson from over here. And this one is not just limited to the COVID-19. We will just make a preparation for the possible business continued planning after COVID-19. Regardless of what we have, COVID-19 or some other natural disasters, we need to have a business continued planning over here. Now we can sum up the contents of these chapters. How other countries have been dealing with COVID-19. So there are lots of smart approaches, smart responses to COVID-19. I just picked up 3 cases of EU, UK, and New Zealand, but you can go to the other resources and you can take some lessons from other countries, from even Korea. And Korea have a very smart systems, and Korea have a very effective ICT systems, and we did a good job in dealing with COVID-19. So you can take any cases or practices so that you can make use of your own resources effectively. And simply put, COVID-19 has accelerated the digital transformation from digital transformation perspective. What can we find in common? Digital approach is a major part of the response to the pandemic. So digital. Make use of ICT, digital potential. And in Korea, testing, tracking, and treating COVID-19 was very effective, which all required digital technologies. In addition to technologies, we need a legal and institutional and behavioral changes too. And also, we need to cooperate across the border during the COVID-19 and even after the pandemic. That's what we have to learn from the existing cases, and that's what we are supposed to do even after COVID-19 is over. Thank you very much for your attention and time.